Hey everyone, this is a second video this evening. All right, so I want to answer the question, why does Bitcoin's price bottom out at certain levels and keep then march back up? So let me do a quick recap of the price of Bitcoin from its start. So it starts at about $0, and then it goes up to about 5 cents, stays there a while, and then goes up to $32, and then comes back down to $2, which is a 94% price correction. Then it goes from $2 up to $1,200 over the course of a couple of years, and then it comes back down to $92, which is a 93% price correction. Then it zooms up to $19,000, comes back down to $3,200, and then it zooms up to $69,000, and then it comes back down to $15,500. And each of those is a 94%, then a 93%, then an 84%, and then a 78% price correction. So the question is, why back in 2011 did the price not go below $2? And why in 2014 did it not go below $92? And why in 2018 did the price not go below $3,200? And why back in 2022 did the price not go below $15,500? So the price of Bitcoin, so I want to answer that question. And the short take is it's based entirely on supply and demand. And when you look inside an asset like Bitcoin and you study its fundamentals and its technology, you realize it's super incredible technology and incredibly impressive. And because it's incredible and incredibly impressive, people want it at various price points. Now, how much they want and how badly they want it is varies by price point. So I want to use the example of my recent purchase where I converted my entire Baumgar Corporation 11 years of 401k between 2003 and 2014. That entire 11-year 401k, I converted the entire thing to Bitcoin a few weeks ago at 57,300 a coin. So I want to walk through that example as an example of how the supply and demand dynamics of Bitcoin work. Okay, so Bitcoin was, in the $60,000. I was comfortable, with the amount of Bitcoin I owned, and which was about, 95.6%. So, mid 95% of my liquid assets. But that the calculation of those liquid assets did not include retirement funds, because those are, illiquid, and I explained that in a prior video. Okay, so as the price went from 64,500 down to 60,500, about a $4,000 drop, I covered in a previous video how my likelihood of wanting to buy more Bitcoin went from I'm good, I've got enough, I'm happy where I am, I've got everything balanced the way I want, to, okay, if people are going to sell me, cheaper Bitcoin, at some point I'm going to buy more of it. I'm going to find a way, one way or another. And I covered that in a previous video. Okay. And I also covered in a previous video that as the price went from 64,500 down to 60,500, that my feeling was that it moved me from I have enough, I don't need more right now, to about 50% of the way to I'm going to find a way to get more through any legal means possible, one way or another. And so, which logically means if about a $4,000 price move gets me about 50% of the way, then it would be logical that another $4,000 price move would get me the other 50% of the way to buying more Bitcoin. Well, predictably, that is exactly what happened. So as the price went from 60,500 down into the high 50s and ultimately into, 56,500, which is exactly $4,000 below 60,500. As the price went down to 56,500, once again, I decided, hey, I do not have enough Bitcoin and I got to find a way to get more Bitcoin. So what did I do? Well, I looked at my available assets. It was going to be too technologically complicated to liquidate gold, physical gold, which I don't have that much of. And I did not want to go try to figure out how to convert this Baumgar Corporation 401k into Bitcoin, because again, I could tell that was going to be a pain and I just didn't want to do it. So I covered that in one of my videos, and my friend Lee posted on my Facebook page that, hey, it's actually not that hard. You can convert an old 401k to an IRA within the Fidelity platform, and it's just not that hard. So because the price of Bitcoin had moved to the point that I was ready to do that, I jumped through the hoops and figured out it was not actually that hard, and I converted the entire Baumgar 401k to an IRA, which took a couple days, and actually it took like 10 minutes to start it, but then it took a couple days before the conversion actually happened and I could buy FBTC, which is the Fidelity Bitcoin Bitcoin ETF. F as in Foxtrot, BTC as in Bravo, Tango, Charlie, FBTC, which stands for Fidelity Bitcoin. But anyway, so I converted all that. Okay, so let's evaluate that. Had the price of Bitcoin not moved, I would not have taken an action that resulted in it, did not have affected the price. Now, obviously, when I convert an old 401k 100% into Bitcoin, it's not like it moves the price of Bitcoin that much. I mean, it's truly imperceptible. But when 8 billion people in the world, of which, call it 5%, have any Bitcoin at all, when they're all making those same choices I am about how much Bitcoin they own, it does move the price, on a macro level when, hundreds of millions of people are making those choices. And so the position I was in was I was happy with what I owned and everything was fine, but then the price started to go down. So just like what happened back in 2011, as the price dropped from $32 to $2, or in 2014 where the price dropped from $1,200 to $92, or in 2018 when the price dropped from $19,000 down to $3,200, or in 2022 when the price dropped from $69,000 down to $15,500. In each of those cases, there were people like me. Now, I was very active in 2022. As the price came down, I was very aggressively buying Bitcoin. In fact, half the Bitcoin I own was bought back in, 2017, 2018. Probably the other half was bought for way more money than I could have gotten the same Bitcoin for in 2017 and 2018, was bought in 2021, 2022, and 2023 as the price of Bitcoin came down. And so every time the price of anything that is inherently has a deep underlying fundamental value, as it goes down, there are people like me saying, wow, well, at that price, I want more of that. So the same thing happened here. As the price of Bitcoin went down, people like me said, wait a second, I had enough Bitcoin at 60,000 a coin, but if the prices are in the 50,000s, I want more of that $50,000-ish Bitcoin. And in my case, I wanted enough of it that I was willing to liquidate an entire 100% 11-year hard work 401k to buy more Bitcoin at 57,300. Now, again, I did not intend to do that. If the price was sitting at 67,000, I would have been happy. I would have cruised along. I would have been content. And I would not have thought about it because the balance of all of my assets based on where they were and based on how much headache it would have been to move each one was kind of good enough for me. I was fine with it. But again, as the price started going down, I decided I was not fine with it and I wanted more Bitcoin. And others have told me the same thing. Multiple other people have reached out to me and said, hey, as the price went down, I converted a 401k or an IRA, or I bought a lot more, or whatever it was. So the reason any asset bottoms at a specific price in a specific price cycle is because the demand for that asset increases to the point that the buyers outrun the sellers. So as there are more buyers for an asset, the price turns around and stops falling and it goes back up. Conversely, at the top of a price cycle, when you run out of new buyers and there are more sellers than buyers at the top of a price cycle, the price reverses and it starts to go back down. So in the near term, Bitcoin will continue to be volatile because we're very early in the Bitcoin adoption life cycle. It's way less volatile than it used to be, but in the near term, it will continue to be volatile. Once Bitcoin is the default monetary system of the world, it will not be very volatile at all. But at that point, the only increase in the value of Bitcoin will be mostly just the productivity increases of humankind, which is about 2% to 3% a year. And at that point, it will just be money. It won't be an investment that's also money. It will just be money. But we are decades away from Bitcoin being just money. And in those intervening decades, especially the next, from now for, let's call it the next 5 years, I think there's an incredible opportunity to invest in Bitcoin. At some point after that, Bitcoin, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, will be the monetary system of the world. And when everybody's using it, again, there won't be any volatility, but no volatility also means no upside other than just 2% to 3% a year based on human productivity growth, which is still good because that's the opposite of the US dollar. Obviously, the US dollar is losing somewhere between 2% and 9%, well, it's not even 2%, 3% and 9% a year, depending on whose measure you believe in. The US dollar is losing that much value per year versus Bitcoin, which will always, in the macro long term, increase in value because it's scarce, unlike the US dollar. So anyway, just wanted to cover that. any asset that works on supply and demand works that way. As the price rises, eventually there are people that are willing to part with it at that asset to buy things that improve the life of their family or themselves, and that puts sell pressure on the asset. And as the price of an asset falls, there are people like me and others who believe in Bitcoin who say, hey, I was good owning X amount of Bitcoin, but at these cheaper prices, in my case, down in the 50,000s, 57,300 to be exact in my case, I was determined ultimately that I was not happy with the amount of Bitcoin I owned, and I wanted to own more Bitcoin, and I was willing to jump through the hoops to make that happen. So as a result of that dynamic, I believe every time Bitcoin's price hits a bottom, it will just keep climbing from there. And we don't know what those numbers will be. It's just like the song, I Get Knocked Down, but I'll sing it for you. I'm not going to sing it for you, but the lyrics are back from the 90s. It's from Chumbawamba. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down, and on and on. And that's the way an asset like Bitcoin works that has a very high fundamental underlying value, is it just always bounces back and then goes higher. And then it, goes through a price correction, and then it bounces back and goes even higher and higher and higher, on and on and on. So that's how that works. Hopefully this is helpful, and hopefully my real world example of my own Bitcoin price purchasing is helpful understanding how, as the price of something falls, the number of buyers increases, and eventually they outnumber the number of sellers, and the price turns around and keeps going higher. Again, as long as you're dealing with an asset that's fundamentals are rock solid, and in the case of Bitcoin, they are, which means the price over time keeps climbing higher. Hopefully this is helpful. Thanks.